I'm looking for my sister.
She's gone missing.
I didn't say that.
Up the road. That's why people get into trouble.
Looks like it too.
Weird. That's my sister's signature. Oh, shit.
Guys, check it out.
What happened to these people?
We all got fucking murdered. And now we're here again.
So the night is just gonna repeat itself.
Please let me out.
Holy shit.
At the beginning of the movie, a girl named Melanie is seen desperately fleeing from mysterious entities. She manages to escape and emerges from an underground tunnel, believing she's finally safe. However, the entity reappears, and despite her terrified pleas, saying she can't die again, it kills her without mercy. 1 year later, we see a group of friends on a trip. Max asks if they're going to perform some kind of ritual when they arrive, noting that it's the final stop of their tour. And even though they haven't discovered anything new, he suggests they should at least mark the occasion. Abe suggests it might be for closure, but Clover replies, "This isn't closure, saying my sister is missing, not dead." Next, we learn that Melanie was Clover's sister, and we see them in front of the gas station where Melanie had sent her last message to Clover. Megan suggests they join hands, saying they've done it everywhere else and it wouldn't feel right not to hear. Nina jokes that Megan's best psychic moment was sensing her dad's affair with Max's mom. And Clover adds they all figured it out after hearing them in the garage. Megan says Melanie likely vanished right after the video, so they might sense her leftover energy. Clover agrees, and they all join hands in a circle. Megan tells them to close their eyes and imagine it like tuning an old radio or TV trying to catch a signal. Just then, a bus passes by, breaking their focus and frustrating everyone. As Megan suggests trying again, they notice Clover walking into the store. Inside, Clover meets Hill and shows him Melanie's photo, asking if she looks familiar. Hill asks if she's missing, and when Clover says she didn't say that, he says she's not the first to ask about someone. When Clover asks if many people go missing here, Hill replies not here, but up the road in Glore Valley. Outside, Abe says he thought this was just a getaway, not a revisit of Clover's sister's last steps. And as a psych major, he's not sure it's good for her. Megan argues it might help Clover heal. And when Max warns it could also trigger her, Megan asks why he even came. Nina cuts in, saying they get through tough stuff by sticking together. And if anyone's to blame, it's Melanie for leaving Clover right after their mom died. Just then, Clover returns, saying she thinks she knows where Melanie vanished. As they drive toward town in heavy rain, Clover asks to turn back, but Abe refuses, saying he's already done it twice. The group starts arguing, but suddenly they break through the downpour, falling silent in shock. Abe pulls into a visitor center nearby, and they're all stunned to see that the weather there is completely clear, while heavy rain continues around it. Abe says there's a name for this kind of weather anomaly, but he can't remember it. Max replies that whatever it is, they should just get back in the car and head home. But Abe says he's not driving through that storm again. Max pulls out his phone to look for another route and asks if anyone has a signal, to which Megan says she does, but a bad one. Nina suggests there might be someone inside who can tell them where they are, so they decide to go in and check. Abe, Nina, and Megan enter the visitor center, but find no one there. As they look around, Nina spots a calendar with the date marked as October 24, 1998. Her eyes are drawn to a strange hourglass mounted on the wall. Meanwhile, Abe discovers a wall covered with various posters, many of which are for missing persons. Outside, Clover hears Melanie calling her name and spots a distant figure standing in the rain. Thinking it is Melanie, she begins walking toward it, and Max, noticing her, rushes to stop her. Inside, Abe peels posters off the wall and finds another layer beneath. revealing more missing persons. He rips them down faster, shocked by how many were hidden. Nina signs her name in the guest register, and meanwhile, Max pulls Clover back from the rain, asking if she's okay, to which Clover says she thought she saw someone. Nina flips through the register and finds multiple entries written by Melanie. Just then, Megan arrives, and Nina quickly shows her the pages. Abe then shows them the missing posters, pointing out that none of them have any details. No names, dates, or contact info. Megan asks, "Then what's the point?" And Nina tells Abe that she found something too. As they step outside, Clover is checking the register and seeing its Glore Valley. She tells others that's where Melanie vanished. She admits she heard Melanie call her name in the rain, but didn't believe it until now. Nina asks, did one of them turn the hourglass over? But only then do they hear strange noises coming from outside, and when they go to the window to check, they find that Abe's car is no longer there. As they rush out of the house, Abe's car suddenly starts across the waterfall, and when he steps forward, the engine roars, so he urges everyone back inside. They retreat and watch from the window, and Nina asks, "Can we check our phones again?" To which Max says nothing's worked since we got here. Clover insists there must be a phone somewhere, but Nina replies, "I'm not taking my eyes off that car." Megan, Max, and Clover head into the basement and find another house beneath the center, where Max notices a window and is surprised to see one underground. Just then, Clover finds a phone and is relieved to hear a dial tone. However, when she dials 911, she realizes it's not working. Meanwhile, Nina says it's probably just someone messing with them, and everything will be fine. But Abe replies, unless this is what happened to Melanie before she went missing. Just then, they hear a noise, and Abe says he's going to check it out and will be right back. Megan tries to connect with someone using the radio, and they actually get a response, but they're unable to make contact. Upstairs, a light suddenly goes out with some noise, and thinking it might be Abe, Nina heads over to check, but she can't see anything in the dark. Cautiously, she moves forward, feeling her way along the wall, and as she searches for the light switch, her hand touches something wet. Suddenly, she gets startled by a masked man who has killed Abe. The rest of the group becomes alarmed, and Max says he'll go check it out. Max cautiously heads upstairs and sees the masked man has killed Nina. When the man notices him, Max bolts downstairs and urgently tells Megan and Clover to hide. After some time, when the masked man comes downstairs, searching for them, Max grabs a chair and strikes him, but it has no effect. Max grabs a broken part to strike, but the man stops him and drives it into his eye, killing him instantly. He then steps forward and stands by the door, and at that moment, Clover spots a knife nearby. She cautiously moves toward it to grab it, but the man hears the sound. Clover freezes, and as he turns his head, she slowly retreats back to her spot. The man then advances toward the closet where Megan is hiding. Suddenly, he breaks it open and throws Megan out. He then grabs her and slams her against the wall, knocking her down. Then he grabs her head and begins smashing it against the floor. Megan pleads for mercy, but he continues the brutal assault. Desperate, Clover stabs him with the knife, but it has no effect. Realizing this, Clover flees in terror, rushing out of the house and into the woods, but she suddenly collides with something and falls. Just then, she hears some noise and immediately stands up, and as she looks around, she sees Melanie there. But before she can react, the man attacks Clover and kills her. The hourglass suddenly begins to spin, and one by one, they all start coming back to life, finding themselves back at home. Next, they're all stunned to find their missing posters pinned to the wall. Megan says it has a hold on us now, and when Clover asks, what does she mean? Megan replies, I don't know, but I can feel it. Max, trying to make sense of it, asks, so the night is just starting over? Just then, the lights begin to flicker, and suddenly, they hear a door creak open only to slam shut. Frightened, they all step out to investigate and find the door opening and slamming shut on its own. Abe quickly rushes over and locks it. But the moment he turns around, the door begins to open again. He slams it shut once more, and Max helps by wedging a stand against it to keep it from opening. Meanwhile, Nina notices that sand has started falling from the hourglass again. Max turns to Megan and asks, "Are you okay?" But Megan replies, "Tonight feels different," saying it's worse. Max says he completely believes in her psychic abilities now, but suddenly Megan's body begins to stiffen, and she lets out a piercing scream, causing all the lights in the house to explode. Clover turns on a flashlight, only to realize Megan is missing, and as they search for her, Clover urges them to stay quiet and listen. In the silence, they hear faint whispering and cautiously follow it to a nearby room, where they find Megan, whispering with her eyes completely black. Megan suddenly raises her hand and points at Melanie's poster, whispering for help. Then, she starts pointing to other posters one by one, speaking in different voices, and it becomes clear that all the missing people were also trapped in this house. Suddenly, Megan screams again, then falls silent and says, "Don't let it in," and then she gets killed. Abe warns them not to touch her, fearing whatever possessed her could spread. But Max says that's not how possession works. Nina adds, "Megan warned that something is coming," and just then, there's a knock at the door. They all rush out as the knocking continues, and Abe peers through the window, but sees no one, until a girl's voice calls out, asking if anyone is there. Clover says it's Melanie and runs to the door, but Abe stops her, reminding her that Megan said, "Don't let it in." Suddenly, Melanie screams as if she's being attacked. Max removes the door stand, and Clover rushes out, only to find no one there. Confused, she looks around, and Max spots a house and asks, "What is that?" Abe says, "That wasn't there before." And suddenly, a force lifts Clover and throws her away. The same force then slams Max inside and shuts the door. The force drags Clover toward the mysterious house, and the door creaks open on its own. The force releases Clover at the doorstep, and confused, as she stands up, she is yanked inside and the door slams shut. The visitor center door unlocks on its own, and Max runs toward it. But Abe stops him, saying Clover is gone and their best option is to leave and get help. Max reminds him, Megan said it won't let them leave, but Abe brushes it off. Max asks Nina if she agrees, and she says it's clear they're dealing with something dangerous. Max turns to leave, but Abe asks if he thinks this will make her take him back. Max snaps that if they survive, they can both go to hell, then storms out. Abe turns to Nina and explains they're not abandoning anyone, just getting help. And when she asks why he said that to Max, Abe says Max is about to get himself killed. He adds that she wants to save everyone, but they can't help anyone if they don't save themselves first. Meanwhile, inside the house, Clover finds an old woman sitting silently, watching a news broadcast on an old television about a mine collapse that struck Glore Valley. Confused and uneasy, she slowly turns around and heads toward the door, only to find it locked. And as she struggles with the handle, the old woman turns to look at her. As Clover looks back, she sees the woman now standing. Lowering her mask, she lets out a chilling laugh and walks toward Clover. Clover pleads to leave, but the woman says, "There's only one way out. Survive the night or become part of it." Clover tries to escape, but the woman slams her down, forcing the mask toward her face and whispering, "Suffer like the rest of this cursed town, until hell swallows you too." The woman's body then turns into a skeleton before collapsing into ash, and an unsettling smile creeps across Clover's face. The door to the house creaks open on its own, and Max cautiously approaches, calling out for Clover as he steps inside. Meanwhile, Nina and Abe rush to the car, and Nina says she can't leave her friends, but Abe insists they have no choice. Nina pleads with him to unlock the door, but he drives away. However, just moments later, a terrifying monster appears in front of the car, forcing him to throw the car into reverse and speed back toward the visitor center. Both scramble to get out, but Nina's door is still locked, and suddenly blood splatters across her window. Horrified, she turns to see Abe slumped lifeless in his seat. Meanwhile, inside the house, as Max searches for Clover, a chair begins to rock on its own. Perplexed, he approaches the chair and stops it with his foot. He then backs away and turns to leave, but the chair starts rocking again, this time with a toy on it. Scared, Max cautiously approaches the chair and stops it once more. He then reaches for the toy, picks it up, and kicks it. Suddenly, he he is startled by a masked girl, and she immediately kills him. She then steps out of the house, but the masked man hits her with a jeep, killing her instantly. The hourglass spins once more, and all the friends come back to life to relive the night again. They all lock themselves in the bathroom, and Max asks Clover if she's sure about what the old woman said about surviving. Clover confirms it, and Max suggests that maybe if they can make it until dawn, this might all be over. Abe asks, but what about or become a part of it, to which Megan says it means if we don't get out, we're stuck here forever, and this kind of shit will just keep happening. She adds, we're turning into something else. Abe suggests they just stay in the bathroom until sunrise, but Clover brings up Melanie, reminding them that she's still out there somewhere, to which Megan replies, if she and all the others were still stuck, they'd be here with us. Suddenly, Abe coughs up blood, and he quickly wipes it on the curtain to hide it, but his cough worsens, and before anyone can react, his body explodes, blood and gore splattering everywhere. Panicking, Nina rushes to rinse her mouth at the sink, but Megan stops her, warning Abe drank the water. However, Nina also explodes. The rest of the group bolts out of the bathroom in terror, and Clover asks, what do we do now? But before anyone can answer, Megan starts coughing too. Max and Clover instinctively back away from her, and as her coughing intensifies, one of her legs bursts apart. Max and Clover then watch in horror as her stomach begins to swell grotesquely, and as she turns, it also explodes. Still somehow alive, Megan begins crawling toward them, begging for help, until her head also explodes. Horrified, Clover tells Max to kill her, saying they drank the water, and they're covered in the same stuff, so they have to start over and come up with a plan. Max tells her that sands almost run out, and maybe they will survive this time, but Clover replies they will come back, saying this has happened twice now, and you saw that everyone else had way more signatures in the book. She takes Max's hand and places it on her neck, but he pulls back saying he can't, and only then he explodes. Clover collapses onto the floor, waiting for her death, but just then, a man enters and comes to her, and it's Hill, he says. You almost made it, but not quite, he tells her. You don't survive by sitting still. And then Clover explodes. They're alive once again, and Clover says there has to be something here that can help us come up with a plan. She then finds some ID cards belonging to Dr. Hill and tells the others, this is the guy from the gas station, saying he is somehow connected to this place. Abe reads from an old newspaper, 20 years ago. There was a mining disaster in Glore Valley, and Clover adds, over 1,100 died after drilling too deep. And Dr. Alan Hill, a trauma specialist, was brought in to help survivors. Megan comments, the whole town got swallowed by the earth, and Max adds, that's also why there are windows down here, saying this whole floor used to be above ground. Nina says, then that must be the front door. But Abe says, who gives a shit? Nina opens the door, revealing a dark tunnel echoing with terrifying sounds, prompting her to slam it shut back. Max says, every night, it's something different trying to kill us. And Megan adds, if it were the same thing over and over, we'd get used to it. But the fear comes from not knowing what's next. So, whoever's behind this wants to keep us afraid. Max finds a videotape and plays it, but it turns out to be a porn video. And Abe taunts him, saying that is very powerful. Embarrassed, Max quickly switches to another tape, and this time, they see a man confronting Dr. Hill, asking, what are you doing to me? Why do I keep coming back? Why do you have these things that keep killing me? Hill says, the patient showed signs of starvation, muscle atrophy, and most importantly, intense fear, anxiety, hopelessness, and despair. Luckily for my research, the trauma from the mining disaster still lingers, affecting both survivors and outsiders. The longer he stayed trapped, the more desperate and afraid he became, eventually turning monstrous. 11 nights, that's the longest so far. Over time, those emotions began transforming his body into what we now call the Wendigo. In psychology, the Wendigo symbolizes extreme hunger and desire. It's no coincidence. Megan says that's what's happening to us. And only then, Hill on the radio says now they are getting it. Clover says, let them go, and Hill replies there is a way out, though it comes at a price. When she asks how, he says 4 can leave, but 1 must die. Everyone protests, but Abe suggests they should at least hear him out. Max argues they can't trust Hill, but Clover says their only real shot is getting answers, and Hill has them. Megan quietly says she can feel he's nearby. She concentrates and places her finger on the table. Clover quickly opens a drawer and finds a map of Glore Valley. As she unfolds it, Nina asks how that's supposed to help, saying he could be anywhere, but Clover insists he's at the sanatorium. Abe argues the place doesn't even exist anymore, but Clover says they just need to draw him out. She tells Hill she wants to see him face to face, and he replies that can be arranged, but only her. Max warns it's a trap, but Abe thinks it's a good idea, reminding them it's only night 4 and she'll have more chances. Clover agrees, saying this might be their chance, and Hill says he is out in the woods with her sister, and he might just let her see her. They try to stop Clover, but she leaves anyway. Max insists they need to find her before it's too late, and when Abe asks, for what? Max says, if she's already dead, we'll kill each other and start over. Abe asks, then what? Saying we will just keep running until we're out of chances? To which Max replies, I won't live knowing someone else died so I could survive. Abe retorts, how many more deaths can you take? Asking didn't Clover try to kill herself twice last year? Suddenly, Nina drives a pickaxe into him, and as Abe gasps, why? She tells others to go find Clover. Meanwhile, Clover steps into a trap, sending her crashing to the ground. She struggles to pry it open, but it won't budge. Suddenly, the chain attached to the trap jerks as something begins pulling it. Desperate, Clover pleads, but the force drags her through the dirt toward the bushes, and her screams echo into the trees as she's pulled into the darkness. Meanwhile, Abe tells Nina she needs to try and survive, and she says she will, just not this time. He takes her hand and admits, I'm scared of dying, to which she says, me too, but living without my friends scares me even more. Just then, the masked man comes there, and Nina says, him first. Without hesitation, the man kills Abe, and the scene abruptly cuts. On the other hand, Max and Megan hear a strange growl nearby, prompting them to hide. They crouch low, cautiously watching the area, but something wet drips onto Megan's shoulder, and they flee, seeing an entity above them. Panicked, they bolt into the woods, but Megan suddenly stumbles and falls, landing on a glass skylight. Max says, give me your hand and I'll pull on 3, but before he can, the entity grabs Megan's leg and leaps onto her, shattering the glass, and they crash through, and Max watches helplessly as the creature drags her into the darkness below. Meanwhile, Clover is seen crawling through the dirt, with the trap still clamped around her leg. Max finally finds her and hurries to her side, frantically trying to pry the trap open, but an unnatural sound echoes nearby. They both look up and freeze, as a demonic version of Melanie emerges from the shadows and charges toward them. Max quickly rips the trap and snaps it onto Melanie's head, just in time for them to flee. They both hide under a shed, where Clover admits she messed up. Max says no, and tries to calm her down, but she asks why he came for her, saying they all could have escaped, to which he replies that they still have a chance to get out of this, and he's not leaving her behind. Suddenly, they hear Melanie's growl, and when Clover asks about the others, Max says Megan is dead. Clover picks up a shard from a broken bottle and hands it to him, saying their next chance might be their last, but she believes they can still survive. Max then slits her throat with it, and she thanks him before dying. Afterward, Max drinks water dripping from above, then heads toward Melanie to confront her, and as she turns, he explodes. In a flashback, Clover offers their mother's pendant to Melanie, but she tells Clover to keep it. Clover suggests waiting out the storm, but Melanie insists on leaving, saying New York is far. She pleads with Clover to come with her, but Clover refuses. Melanie says, staying isn't living, while Clover argues she's not running away. Melanie replies, she's running towards something better, and though she loves her, she can't stay and become someone she'd end up hating. She then turns and leaves the house, and realizing Melanie is truly gone, Clover tries to stop her, but the demonic Melanie attacks, jolting Clover awake from her sleep. Max calms her down and explains that he had to drag her in here. Abe asks if there's something on his back, and to their horror, they see something growing along his spine. But Nina says he looks fine. Clover then asks how long they've been here, and Max guesses 3 or 4 nights, but Abe says 5. However, Nina insists it's been 13 nights and tells them to go check the book. Clover rushes to check the book, and as she flips through the pages, she realizes that no one has more than 13 entries, meaning tonight might be their last chance. She then goes to the window and lifts the blind, only to see that several houses have appeared outside. She returns to the others and asks, "Where's Megan?" Nina runs to check the bathroom, but soon after she comes back out, saying she's not there. Abe says the night must have gotten to her first, reminding them, survive the night or become a part of it, and adds that it doesn't have to happen to all of them at once. Nina argues that's because nothing's clearly explained, but Abe suggests maybe everyone gets a different number of chances. Nina asks, "So what now?" And Clover says, "Why didn't we write things down?" Nina replies, "It'd just disappear when the night resets." But Clover points out, "Your signature isn't." Abe remembers, "Didn't I record something?" He checks his phone and discovers it's filled with videos. He plays one, in which a worm crawls out of Clover's cheek, and as Abe tries to grab it, the worm slips back inside. Clover asks, "Is it gone?" And Max says yes, but when she looks at the floor to check, her face is now half decomposed. In the second video, they see a figure in a mask, a massive monster, approaching them. In the next, they're attacked by a horrifying creature, and Max tries to kill it, but it won't die. In another video, they're all lying dead when Hill enters, checks their bodies, then looks at his watch and walks out. It is revealed that Megan was recording that video and says she's going to follow him and try to find something that can help them. Suddenly, the siren sounds outside, and when they rush to the window, they see creatures approaching the house. Nina says they need to run, but Abe argues, "All we've been doing is running away." Clover says, "Then let's start running towards something." She grabs a pickaxe, saying, "I'm going into that tunnel." She then apologizes, saying they're all here because of her. She says, "Melanie was my family, but so are all of you, so I'm going to save Megan, kill Hill, and get them out of here." Clover stands in front of the door, but Nina calls out to her and says, "We stick together." All 4 of them then enter the tunnel and soon come across a window. Clover opens it, and they carefully climb into a building. Inside, they're startled by seeing demonic Melanie, and Clover warns everyone not to move. The creature eventually leaves, but another one appears and lunges at Nina. She struggles to break free, and Clover attacks the creature, giving them just enough time to escape. As they run through the tunnel, more creatures begin to chase them, and in an attempt to escape, they enter a house. Max spots the masked man on the skylight, and moments later, he crashes into the house. As the figure approaches the others, Max tells Clover to run, promising they'll find another way out. And when the man turns toward her, Max hurls a can to distract him. As Clover searches for Megan, Melanie suddenly appears and tackles her to the ground. Clover scrambles up and runs, but Melanie catches her and hurls her down the stairs. Melanie then leaps from the top of the stairs and lets out a piercing scream. Clover gets up, pleading, "Don't do this." And when Melanie growls at her, Clover reminds her, "It's me." But then she lunges at her, slamming her onto a jagged object. Clover is injured too, but manages to stand. She looks at Melanie and says, I love you, but I'm getting out of this hellhole." Meanwhile, the others are fighting the masked man, and after a fierce struggle, they manage to knock him down. The 3 of them then grab his hammer, and together, they crushes his head with it. Meanwhile, Clover hides from a creature lurking right next to her. She holds her breath as it lingers dangerously close, but after a tense moment, it finally moves away. She then enters another part of the building and finds Megan locked inside a room. A creature suddenly appears, terrifying her. It tries to reach Megan, but Clover realizes it's chained, and she reassures Megan, promising to find a key, and quickly rushes off. Desperately searching, Clover enters a room that looks like an office, and on the desk, she's shocked to see her own psychiatric report. As she walks toward a wall of TVs, Hill slams the door shut behind her and locks it. He says, "You've been an intriguing patient, far more interesting than the rest." He picks up her file and reads aloud. Severe depression, 2 failed suicide attempts, and extreme anxiety. Hill says she has lost control, and that's evident in every monster you've encountered here. He tells her that each one is a unique manifestation of your psyche. Clover asks, "What are you talking about?" And Hill replies that being chased by a masked psycho is fairly common, as everyone feels powerless in some way, and the witch is a personification of repression. He adds that spontaneous combustion is very rare, but in her case, he believes it's a reflection of her more self-destructive tendencies. Clover says she's getting her friends out of there, and Hill tells her she's the only one who can, because this place feeds on her insecurities and fears. Clover asks if he's telling her that all of this was just in her head, and Hill answers, "It's real, but you're the engine that makes it run, just like Melanie did, and all the others before you." Clover asks, "Why is he doing this?" And he says, "Because this is what he studied." As he explains further, Clover slides his cup under the dripping water, and before he turns, she slides the cup back to its place. Hill then picks up his cup and drinks the tea, and as he does, Clover steps back. Meanwhile, the others are being chased by the creatures, and in the chaos, Abe gets stuck against a wall. Hill tells Clover that to make all this truly effective, someone has to die. But suddenly, his stomach starts making strange noises, and Clover says, "But this time, it's you." Hill lunges at her, but she pushes him away, and then he explodes. On the other hand, Max pulls Abe out, causing the wall to break, which gives them enough time to escape. Clover grabs the keys and rushes back to Megan. She quickly unlocks the door, enters the room, and frees Megan just before the creature breaks the chain. And together, they lock the creature inside. As they run to escape, more creatures begin to chase after them. But Clover suddenly bursts from the ground, clawing her way out. A creature grabs Megan's leg, pulling her down and dragging Clover with her. Megan fights back, kicking the creature, giving Clover a chance to climb. Her friends reach out, grabbing her hand and pulling her and Megan out just as the last grains of sand fall into the hourglass. Clover tells them to look at the sky, and they see that it's completely clear, and a moment later, the rain stops as well. After that, they all leave the place behind, and the scene then shifts to Hill's office, where the footage on the TV screens begins to change. As a car stops by at the center, Hill can be heard whistling, and the movie ends.